I wanted to talk to you today about quercetin, a supplement that I have found to be very useful in autoimmune disorders. And I wanted to share this research article from the NIH. It's called Potential Implications of Quercetin in Autoimmune Diseases. And the author is Pan Shen et al. It talks about how quercetin is useful in a number of different autoimmune diseases, and it discusses potential pathways as to why it probably helps with all these different autoimmune diseases. So here it talks about quercetin reportedly exerting powerful anti-inflammatory effects, mainly via inhibition of cytokine production. So the cytokines are what triggers inflammation in the body. So if quercetin inhibits cytokine production, it helps prevent inflammation. The other thing that it talks about that quercetin does is that quercetin has excellent antioxidant activity, and that it's mainly exerted via effects on the activity of glutathione, enzymes, and reactive oxygen species. So glutathione is one of the big detoxifiers in the body, and it's also one of the major antioxidants and components that influences our immune system response and also our inflammatory response. So one autoimmune disease that quercetin has been shown to have a good effect for is rheumatoid arthritis. So it talks about how in a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical study, quercetin significantly alleviated morning stiffness and pain in rheumatoid arthritis patients. Quercetin has reduced arthritic scores and improved symptoms significantly in rheumatoid arthritis mice as well by reducing levels of pro-inflammatory cytokines. So here it talks about another study in rats where the rats had induced neurodegenerative problems, and treatment with quercetin alone reversed the aforementioned neurodegenerative effects to an extent, possibly due to its anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, anti-arthritic, and neuroprotective capacities. Another condition that quercetin has been shown to help is inflammatory bowel disease, and that can include ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. Again, there was a study in rats or mice that involved dietary supplementation with 30 milligrams per kilogram of quercetin, and it showed that in these mice, quercetin was able to attenuate or reduce pro-inflammatory cytokines and regulate the gut microbiome. Zhu et al. Reported that quercetin could ameliorate DSS-induced colitis and speculated that this was most likely due to modulating the anti-inflammatory effects of macrophages. So yet another autoimmune condition that quercetin has been shown to help is multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune inflammatory disease of the central nervous system, and it's characterized by demyelination, which means that the insulation around the nerves degenerates. So in MS, they believe that the microglia in our brain gets hyperactivated, and that causes the demyelination of the nerves in multiple sclerosis. So in a mouse study utilizing experimental allergic encephalomyelitis, a Th1 cell-mediated inflammatory demyelinating disorder that is the most commonly used autoimmune model of MS. So basically they're saying they set up another disorder in mice that mimics multiple sclerosis to study the effects of quercetin on these mice who had a similar condition to multiple sclerosis that was induced by the researchers. And basically, it showed that quercetin was associated with reductions in release of tryptase and IL-6 and inhibition of histidine decarboxylase from human mast cells. So basically, it's saying that quercetin may be useful in the complementary treatment of MS because it stabilizes mast cells, which are involved in inflammatory processes and allergic responses in which immunological stimulation causes production of inflammation. So the mast cells trigger inflammation, and quercetin basically calms down the mast cells. And because of that, the microglia in the brain don't get hyperactivated. And because the microglia don't get hyperactivated, then the myelin sheath doesn't get damaged surrounding the neurons. So in that way, quercetin may help multiple sclerosis. Another autoimmune disease that quercetin has been studied in is systemic lupus erythematosus, which is a disorder characterized by immune-mediated inflammation and overproduction of autoantibodies. Quercetin attenuated the symptoms of lupus nephritis. So lupus nephritis would be kidney inflammation related to lupus in a mouse model. And the pathway was inhibition of CD4 T cell activation and inflammatory reactions by macrophages. And yet another autoimmune disease that quercetin has been studied in is Graves' disease, which can cause hyperthyroidism and overactive thyroid. And quercetin can reportedly inhibit DNA damage by modulating oxidative stress in lymphocytes from Graves' disease. Also, atopic dermatitis was studied, and in a mouse model of atopic dermatitis, treatment with quercetin reduced concentrations of TNF alpha and did a few other things in skin tissues and downregulated different levels of different constituents that overstimulate the immune system, basically. So the conclusion of this article is that quercetin is very promising for a various number of autoimmune diseases. And personally, I have used quercetin to work with autoimmune diseases, and I have found good results with it, along with the use of a handful of other supplements that I like to use for autoimmune diseases. I hope this might be another tool in your toolkit as you deal with different autoimmune conditions. Thanks a lot. Have a good day, and subscribe or hit the like button if you got something useful from this video.